What does a DUI lawyer do? What can a DUI lawyer do? These are great questions that I'm going to answer in this video. I'll start by getting the obvious statement out of the way. Every criminal lawyer, whether they are representing their client for DUI, drunk driving, impaired driving, or refusing a breathalyzer, their job is to get the very best outcome for their client. But digging deeper, what does a DUI lawyer do to get the best outcome for their client? What can an impaired driving lawyer do to get the best outcome for their client? Let's get started. First, it always starts with the evidence. DUI lawyers first need to understand what happened to get the best outcome for an impaired driving client. In other words, what's the evidence that the government will be using to convict you? You do not need to prove that you are innocent in our legal system. In your DUI case, it's the government's job, represented by lawyers known as Crown lawyers, to prove that you are guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. To convict you of your DUI charge, the Crown lawyers will rely on the evidence that the police have gathered. The Crown legally needs to disclose all the evidence they will be using to convict you. DUI lawyers always start their job by reviewing the evidence. Second, we make sure we get all the evidence. The process of getting your evidence starts at your first court appearance. At this court appearance, you'll get your evidence in a package called disclosure. Most clients don't know that it's common that you do not get all your evidence at your first court appearance. What you get is what the evidence that the police have. You probably don't get the evidence you'll need to properly fight the impaired driving or DUI charge. So DUI lawyers will make sure they get all the evidence. For example, we'll get all the videos in the police car and in the jail cell. And we'll also request a McNeil report. In many cases, the key to getting a good outcome will lie in the evidence that the Crown didn't give you when you got your disclosure package. Third, we will analyze the evidence for opportunities. Once we get all the evidence, then we do a deep dive into the details as they relate to the applicable laws. At this stage, we're looking for opportunities. For example, if there was a breathalyzer machine, which model was used? Was the unit properly calibrated? Who was the technician who operated the machine? Were they properly trained and qualified? Or for example, we'll look to see if there were any violations of your rights under the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We'll do this by analyzing the timeline from your very first interaction with the police until the time the police released you from custody. We'll compare that timeline and what happened to all the rules that the police have to follow. Fourth, we will engage in discussions with the Crown. One of the most important jobs that a DUI lawyer has is to engage in discussions with the Crown. And assuming your lawyer has done a good job analyzing the evidence, they will be able to enter that discussion with clarity about getting the best outcome. Another key factor is knowing that court and having relationships with the Crown lawyers. DUI lawyers who are experienced often have good working relationships, and those relationships are combined with detailed understanding of the evidence and the law. It usually leads to the best outcome and the way forward in your case. If you've been charged with drunk driving, DUI, impaired driving, or refusing a breathalyzer test, your legal strategy can make the difference between winning and losing. Reach out, let's have a confidential and free discussion about your case.